Hello, dear friends. Welcome back to this cozy little corner where stories come alive and where every life, no matter the age, carries wisdom worth sharing. Today, we're sitting down with Walter Grayson to hear a very different perspective on money. Topic: Don't let your money sit in the bank. 7 assets safer than cash. You've probably always thought keeping money in the bank is the safest choice. A doesn't think so. After years of experience, mistakes, and learning, he believes there are assets that are not only safer than cash, but actually protect your wealth better, especially in times of inflation, economic uncertainty, and global instability. In today's conversation, A will explain why cash can sometimes be a decaying asset and what smarter, more practical, and surprisingly accessible alternatives are out there. The late afternoon sun filtered through the lace curtains of Walter Grayson's living room, casting delicate patterns across the hardwood floor in Boise, Idaho. At 67, Walter sat in his well-worn leather armchair, its creaking a familiar soundtrack to his evenings. A steaming mug of black coffee sat on the oakside table next to a small wooden box that held a few cherished silver coins. His silver hair caught the light, and his hands, etched with decades of labor, rested on his knees. The room was quiet, save for the faint drone of a financial news channel on the television, its ticker scrolling numbers that meant less to Walter now than they once had. Outside, the suburban street hummed with life. Children laughed as they pedaled bikes, and a neighbor's lawnmower growled in the distance. Walter's eyes, sharp despite his years, held a story he was ready to share, not just with the imaginary grandchildren at his feet, but with an audience far beyond these walls. Americans worried about their savings, their futures, their dreams. He leaned forward, his voice steady but warm, carrying the weight of a man who'd seen booms and busts, triumphs and regrets. Folks, he began, I'm going to tell you something I learned the hard way, something I wish I'd heard when I was young enough to act on it sooner. Don't keep all your cash in the bank. I know it feels safe. Those numbers on your online statement, that FDIC logo on the teller's counter. But safe isn't the same as smart. Money sitting in a savings account is like leaving your car in the garage for years. It's not moving, it's not growing, and it's rusting away. Inflation's eating it up faster than you think, and the banks, they're not your partners. They're making a fortune off your money while you're lucky to get a fraction of a % in interest. I've been there, and I've got the scars to prove it. Walter paused, his gaze drifting to a framed photograph on the mantel. A younger version of himself, grinning outside the hardware store he'd run for 30 years. The store is gone now, sold 5 years ago, just before the market took a nosedive. That sale had given him a nest egg, a pile of cash he'd thought would secure his retirement. But he'd learned painfully that cash alone wasn't enough. I'm no economist, he continued, a wry smile tugging at his lips. Just a guy who's lived long enough to know what works and what doesn't. Today, I want to tell you about 7 assets. 7 things I trust more than a bank account. These aren't just investments. They're ways to protect what you've spent your life building. So pull up a chair and let's talk. Number 1. Gold and silver, the weight of history. Walter reached for the wooden box on the table, flipping it open to reveal a handful of silver coins, their edges softened by time, but gleaming with a quiet promise. Gold and silver, he said, his voice rich with reverence. They've been money since before banks were even a glimmer in someone's eye. Back in 2008, when the housing market crashed and folks were losing their shirts in the stock market. I had a few ounces of gold tucked away in a safe. It wasn't enough to make me a millionaire, but it was enough to keep me grounded when the world felt like it was spinning out of control. He held up a coin, turning it in the light. "There's something about holding it in your hand," he said. "No hacker can steal it. No bank can freeze it. You don't need a password or a PIN, just a safe place to keep it." He explained how precious metals were a shield against inflation and economic turmoil. When the dollar stumbles, when prices soar, gold and silver stand firm. But don't go crazy, he cautioned. 10, maybe 15% of what you've got. It's an anchor, not the whole ship. Walter's thoughts drifted to his father, a farmer who'd weathered the Great Depression. "Dad used to tell me about burying a tin of silver dollars behind the barn," he said, chuckling softly. "Found it years later, rusted but intact. Paper money from those days was worthless, but those coins, they bought groceries, paid bills. That's what gold and silver do. They last." He shared how he'd started small, buying a few coins at a local shop, then a gold bar when he could afford it. "It's not about getting rich quick," he said. "It's about knowing part of your wealth can't be erased by a computer glitch or a politician's bad decision." Number 2, real estate, roots in the ground. Walter's eyes brightened as he leaned back, the armchair creaking under his weight. "Real estate," he said. "Now that's something you can build a life on. Not just a house, land, property, a place that's yours." I bought my first rental in '85, a rundown duplex on the edge of Boise. Took every penny I had and then some. Fixed it up myself. New paint, new pipes, new everything. Paid it off in 10 years, and that place has been sending me checks ever since. He described the power of owning property, how it gave you leverage in a world that often felt stacked against you. "Banks love handing out mortgages," he said, "but they hate when you own something free and clear. Land doesn't vanish in a stock market crash. People always need a roof over their heads. Renters, buyers, doesn't matter. If you're smart, buy in a good spot, keep it in shape. You've got income for life." Walter shared a story about his neighbor, Clara, a single mother who'd lost her job in 2020 when the pandemic hit. "Clara was scared," he said, his voice softening. "Who wouldn't be? But she owned a small apartment building, 4 units she'd bought cheap and fixed up. Those rents kept her afloat, paid her bills, kept her kids fed. She wasn't living large, but she was free." He urged his audience to start small if they had to. A condo, a duplex, even a plot of land on the outskirts. "You don't need a mansion," he said. "You just need a foothold." He recalled the day he'd signed the papers for that first duplex, his hands shaking with nerves and excitement. "I felt like I was planting a flag," he said, "like I was saying, 'This is mine, and no one's taking it.' That's what real estate gives you, a piece of the world you can stand on." Number 3, dividend-paying stocks, a steady hand. Walter raised a finger, his tone shifting to one of cautious optimism. "Now, don't get me wrong," he said. "The stock market's a beast. I've seen it lift folks up and knock 'em flat. Been through the dot-com bubble, the 2008 crash, the COVID dip. But there's one part I trust, dividend-paying stocks. Not the flashy tech startups, not the hot tips you hear on TV. I'm talking about old-school companies, utilities, consumer goods, the boring stuff. They pay you just for holding their shares." He explained how, after selling his hardware store, he'd put a chunk of the money into a handful of blue-chip stocks. "Every 3 months," he said, "I get a check." It's not enough to buy a private jet, but it covers the gas bill, maybe a nice dinner with my wife, Ellen. It's like planting an apple tree. You tend it, you wait, and it keeps giving you fruit. He described the companies he liked, ones that had been paying dividends for decades, through wars and recessions. They're not sexy, he said, but they're survivors. Walter's voice grew quieter as he shared a lesson from his past. I got greedy once, he admitted. Back in the 90s, I chased tech stocks, dot-coms, startups with no profits, but big promises. Lost half my investment in a year. Taught me to stick with what's steady. He urged his audience to do their homework, to pick companies with a track record. It's not about hitting a home run, he said. It's about staying in the game. He smiled, thinking of the first dividend check he'd received, small but real. I framed it, he said, laughing. Still got it in my office. Reminds me that money can work for you, not just the other way around. Number 4. Treasury bonds. The bedrock of safety. Walter reached for his coffee, took a sip, and frowned. It was lukewarm now. Treasury bonds, he said, setting the mug down. They're not the star of the show, but they're the foundation. The U.S. government's been borrowing money since we fought the British, and they've always paid it back. You lend me your cash, they pay you interest. It's that simple. He explained how bonds were a way to protect money you couldn't afford to lose. I've got some 10-year treasuries, he said. They're not making me rich, but they're earning more than my savings account ever did. 2-3%, sometimes more. When the world gets shaky, recessions, wars, you name it, people run to bonds. That's why they're a safe bet. He described the different types: short-term T-bills, long-term bonds, but kept it simple. You don't need to be a math whiz, he said. Just know they're a place to park your money where it won't disappear. Walter's thoughts turned to his late brother, Carl, a cautious man who'd bought bonds like clockwork. Carl passed away a few years back, he said, his voice catching. Left behind a stack of treasuries for his kids, helped me through college, kept the lights on. That's not just money, that's love, planned out years in advance. He urged his audience to consider bonds for their own families. It's not about getting rich, he said. It's about knowing your people will be okay. Number 5. Farmland, the Earth's promise. Walter's gaze drifted to the window, where the Idaho sky stretched wide and endless. Farmland, he said, his voice warm with nostalgia. That's close to my heart. My granddaddy was a farmer, and he taught me there's nothing more real than the soil under your feet. Food never goes out of style. People gotta eat, no matter what the stock market's doing. He explained how you didn't need to own a sprawling ranch to benefit. There's ways to invest now, he said. Things called REITs, real estate investment trusts. You buy a share, you own a piece of farmland without ever picking up a shovel. I've got a little in one that leases land to potato farmers right here in Idaho. Every year, I get a check, and I sleep better knowing I'm tied to something that feeds people. He described the stability of farmland, how it held value, even when tech stocks crashed or housing markets wobbled. Walter's voice grew soft as he recalled his childhood, trailing his grandfather through wheat fields at dawn. Those mornings, he said, the air smelled like earth and possibility. That land fed our family through tough times. It'll feed yours too if you invest in it. He shared how he'd visited a farm owned by his REIT last year, standing in a field as trucks hauled away crates of potatoes. Felt like I was part of something bigger, he said, something that matters. Number 6, small business ownership, building dreams. Walter's tone shifted, a spark of pride igniting his words. If you've got a fire in your belly, he said, think about owning a small business or backing one. I ran my hardware store for 30 years. Long hours, tight margins, customers who didn't always pay on time. But it was mine. Every sale, every handshake, that was my wealth. He acknowledged the risks, but argued the reward was worth it. You don't have to start from nothing, he said. Buy a franchise, a coffee shop, a gym, or invest in someone you trust. My buddy Tom runs a diner downtown. I put in some cash to help him get started, and now I get a slice of the profits. Feels good, knowing I helped a friend build something. He described the pride of seeing Tom's diner thrive, packed with locals on weekend mornings. Walter's eyes gleamed as he recalled opening his store in '79. That first day, he said, flipping the open sign, I felt 10 feet tall. Like I was saying, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. A business isn't just money, it's your mark on the world. He urged his audience to consider their skills, their passions. Maybe you're good with numbers or you love fixing things, he said. There's a business out there for you. Take the leap. Number 7, collectibles, stories that hold value. Walter chuckled, a mischievous glint in his eye. This one's a bit different, he said, but stick with me. Collectibles. Not fads like trading cards or toys, unless you really know your stuff. I'm talking about rare coins, vintage watches, maybe art if you've got an eye for it. Things that hold value because they're unique. He shared the story of a Rolex he'd bought in 1975. A splurge after a banner year at the store. Cost me $1,000, he said. Took me months to justify it. Today, it's worth $12,000. Not because I'm a genius, just because quality endures. He described how he'd learned to spot value, visiting estate sales and auctions, talking to collectors. You gotta be careful, he said. Do your research, don't get suckered. But there's money in things people cherish. Walter's voice softened as he looked at the watch on his wrist, the same Rolex, its face scratched but ticking faithfully. This isn't just an investment, he said. It's been with me through everything. My daughter's wedding, my son's graduation, the day we lost Carl. It's a story, and stories have value. He urged his audience to explore, to find something they loved. It's not just profit, he said, it's joy. Walter rose slowly from his armchair, his joints groaning like old floorboards. As he made his way to the window, he leaned on the sill for a moment, letting the golden light of dusk spill over his weathered face. Outside, a young couple passed by, pushing a stroller with a soft rhythm that echoed a life just beginning. The baby's tiny hat bobbed with each step, and Walter's chest tightened, not with sorrow, but with something heavier, purpose. He turned back to the room. The light caught the lines in his face, and for a moment he looked every bit the man who had lived, lost, and learned more than most would ever know. I'm not here to scare you, he began, his voice steady but low, the kind of voice that made you lean in. But I am here to shake you awake. He paused, letting the silence settle like dust on the wooden floor. Your money. It's not just numbers blinking on a screen. It's every overtime shift you took when your back hurt. It's every dinner you skipped, every coat you didn't buy, so your kids wouldn't feel the cold. It's your sweat, your sacrifices, your dreams. He stepped forward, his eyes locked on the small audience gathered in front of him. And right now, it's sitting there, shrinking, fading, while the world spins forward and leaves you behind. His voice rose, not loud, but powerful, urgent. Take a step, any step. Buy a single silver coin. Call a realtor and ask what a rental goes for in your neighborhood. Pick up a book on bonds, on index funds, on anything. Don't wait until the weight of regret is heavier than fear. Start small. But for God's sake, start. He scanned the room, not looking for approval, but for recognition. For that flicker in someone's eyes that said, "Yes, I get it now. You've got plans, don't you?" His voice softened, now laced with compassion. A place to call your own, a trip you've postponed too long, maybe just a life where the phone doesn't ring with another bill collector. He paused, letting the words land. Those plans, they need protection. They need movement. I'm not some genius. I'm just an old man with more bruises than trophies. I've stumbled so many damn times, I lost count. But I'll tell you this, if I can get back up, so can you. Walter's hand trembled slightly as he gestured toward the door. The world's still out there. Go build something real, something that outlasts you. Then, slowly, he sank back into his armchair, the fabric sighing beneath him. The room held his words like a held breath, warm with conviction and quiet fire. Outside, twilight deepened. The stroller disappeared down the street. Porch lights blinked on one by one, and somewhere in the quiet, Walter allowed himself a rare smile. Because maybe, just maybe, someone out there was listening. Someone who will wake up tomorrow and finally take that first brave step. Dear friend, if this story touched you, even just a little, then I have one small favor to ask. Please hit the subscribe button and share it with someone you care about. Maybe it's someone struggling with money, stuck in the middle of tough decisions, or simply someone who needs a little hope. A reminder that they're not alone. I don't tell these stories for attention. I tell them because I've been there, lost, overwhelmed, convinced I'd never make it out. But I did. And if I could do it, so can you. There's still so much I want to share. Lessons from real life, small steps that led to big changes, and everyday moments that quietly transform lives. Let's keep this flame alive, not just for me, but for all of us, for those learning to live better, love deeper, and believe harder in the future ahead. Thank you for being here. This journey means so much more with you walking beside me.